The airplane hummed softly as it cut through the clouds, the rhythmic vibration lulling most passengers into a quiet daze. Businessmen typed away on laptops, a mother hushed her crying baby, and flight attendants moved swiftly down the aisle, checking seatbelts and smiles. But not everyone was at peace. Row 12, Seat C, was about to become the center of a storm. The girl sitting there looked far too calm for the chaos that was about to unfold. She was barely 16, dressed in a simple gray t-shirt and jeans, her phone loosely in her hands. Most people on board thought she was just another quiet teenager. No one could have guessed that the smallest passenger on the plane was about to change the fate of an entire airline. It started with a misunderstanding, or at least, that's how the flight attendant later tried to explain it. The attendant, tall, poised, with a sharp expression carved into her face, walked briskly toward the girl. She stopped beside her, leaned in, and without lowering her voice, barked, "You can't sit here. Get up, now." The girl blinked, her eyes widening slightly, not in fear, but confusion. "This is my assigned seat," she replied softly, showing her boarding pass. The attendant didn't even glance at it. "I don't care. You're being moved. Get off this plane if you have a problem with it. People like you always cause delays." The surrounding passengers exchanged awkward glances. A man in the row behind shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. No one ever spoke up on planes, not when it came to confrontations with crew. The girl didn't argue. She simply tilted her head, studying the woman, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Is that your final decision?" she asked, her voice even, almost too calm for a teenager being humiliated in public. "Final decision?" The attendant scoffed and leaned closer, her voice dripping with authority. "I said get off my plane." Those words. "My plane." The girl's fingers brushed over her phone, almost lazily. She didn't argue, didn't cry. She just pressed one button and brought the phone to her ear. "Uncle," she said, her voice steady. "It's happening again. I'm on the 7:45 flight to New York. Row 12, Seat C. Yes. The staff. I'll hold." She lowered the phone and looked up at the attendant, whose confidence faltered for the first time. "I'll be done here in 1 minute," the girl said quietly. The plane was silent now, all eyes on the strange exchange. And then the attendant, either to reassert dominance or to mask her sudden unease, did something unthinkable. She slapped the phone out of the girl's hand. The sharp crack of plastic hitting the floor echoed through the cabin. Gasps rose around them. The girl didn't flinch. She just looked at her, a single brow raised. 30 seconds later, the phone buzzed. The girl picked it up, answered, and said only 2 words, "Thank you." Then she turned to the flight attendant and said calmly, "In less than an hour, you'll regret every word you've said." The flight attendant laughed, though it sounded forced. "Oh, really? And what are you going to do?" The girl didn't answer. She just waited. And when the captain's voice came over the intercom 10 minutes later, telling passengers there would be an unexpected delay as they sorted out some urgent operational issues, everyone began to whisper. What no one knew yet was that 9 airports had just suspended all flights for this airline. 1 phone call, 1 girl, and 1 very powerful uncle who didn't tolerate anyone humiliating his niece. But the real twist was still to come. The whispers on the plane grew louder as the engines powered down. The crew, now visibly nervous, walked back and forth, trying to calm the murmurs spreading like wildfire through the cabin. The flight attendant, the same one who had slapped the girl's phone, was pale. She hadn't expected the captain to announce a ground delay just minutes after the girl's cryptic phone call. The girl sat quietly, legs crossed, scrolling on her backup phone as though nothing had happened. Her calmness only made everyone more uneasy. From behind, a man in a suit leaned forward and whispered, "Kid, who are you?" She glanced back and smiled faintly. Someone they shouldn't have messed with. The attendant, finally snapping, stormed back to row 12. Listen, I don't know what game you're playing, but you're scaring the passengers. You need to. The girl held up her phone, showing the screen. It displayed a live video call with a boardroom. Men and women in suits sat around a long table, their faces tense. At the head of the table, a man in his 60s sharp suit, silver hair, commanding presence, was speaking into a microphone. Effective immediately, his deep voice boomed. This airline's license to operate in 9 major airports is suspended pending review. I don't tolerate incompetence, and I don't tolerate anyone laying a hand on my niece. The call ended. The girl lowered her phone and looked up. That's my uncle. He owns 40% of this airline. The attendant staggered back, her composure crumbling. I didn't know. That's the problem, the girl replied softly. You treated me like I was nobody because I looked like just another passenger. Now every person on this plane will get rebooked on a competing airline for free, and your company will pay for it. The passengers, who had been silent, erupted in cheers and applause. Some even pulled out their phones to record the stunned crew. The girl stood, finally slipping her phone into her pocket. I don't like flexing power, she said quietly, but people like you leave me no choice. She walked down the aisle. As the engine shut off entirely, outside, buses were already pulling up to take passengers to new flights. Just as promised, the airline would never recover from the scandal. And by the time the news hit the headlines, teen passenger brings airline to its knees. After abuse, everyone would know her name, but for now, she disappeared into the crowd, just another calm figure with a phone and a family name that could bring empires down with a single call. By the time the passengers were escorted into the terminal, news vans were already waiting. Somehow, the story had leaked before anyone had even stepped off the bus. Cameras flashed. Reporters swarmed. A man with a microphone shouted, "Is it true a teenage passenger shut down 9 airports in one call?" Another called out, "Who is she? Is it true her family owns the airline?" The girl didn't answer. She moved silently through the crowd, security guards clearing her path. She didn't need attention. She knew the story would explode on its own. Inside a quiet lounge, away from the chaos, her phone rang again. She answered without a word. A deep voice said, "It's done. The airline stock is already plummeting. By tomorrow, their board will beg us to buy them out." She leaned back in the plush chair, her expression unreadable. "So we'll own it completely?" "Yes," the voice confirmed. "Exactly as you planned. Their arrogance made it easy." For the first time, the girl smiled. "Good, then make sure every employee who disrespected a passenger today is gone by morning. We'll rebuild the airline, but not with people like that." She ended the call and stared out the window as rain streaked across the glass. Everyone thought she was just a lucky kid with a rich uncle. But the truth was, this had all been calculated. She was the heir to a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, and taking full control of this airline had been on her agenda for months. The flight attendant who slapped her was just the spark she needed to burn down the old management. By evening, the world was watching breaking news headlines. Airline collapses overnight. Takeover imminent. Teen heiress behind historic suspension of 9 airports. And while the media speculated, the girl sat quietly in her penthouse later that night, sipping tea, watching the skyline. Her phone buzzed with a single message from her uncle. "Well played. The company is ours." She set the phone down, gazed at the city below, and whispered, "Sometimes you don't need to shout to change everything. One call is enough." The fallout was immediate. By morning, every major news outlet in the world was running the same headline. "Airline brought to its knees by teen passenger. 1 call. 9 airports suspended. The video recorded by fellow passengers showing the flight attendant yelling, then slapping the phone from the girl's hand had gone viral overnight. Millions watched, outraged. Social media exploded with hashtags demanding justice, calling for boycotts, and praising the mysterious teenager who had stood so calmly through it all. Inside the airline's headquarters, chaos reigned. Executives scrambled, investors panicked, and the stock price nosedived. The CEO, a man who had ignored countless complaints about rude staff and declining service, now faced an emergency board meeting he couldn't escape. And at the center of it all was her daughter, the girl whose name the world soon learned was Ariana Malik. The 18-year-old niece of billionaire industrialist Tariq Malik sat quietly at that boardroom table. Across from men twice her age, Tariq stood beside her, his presence commanding, his voice measured as he addressed the trembling executives. "You let arrogance destroy this company," he said coldly. "You forgot that passengers are not inconveniences, they're the reason you exist. My niece learned that lesson before. She turned 18. None of you have learned it in decades. That's why you're done here." One by one, resignation letters were signed. The airline was no longer theirs. After the meeting, Ariana stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The cameras were waiting. Again, but this time she didn't avoid them. She spoke, her voice calm yet resolute. "I didn't destroy this airline," she said. "I saved it. Because from this day forward, no passenger will ever be treated like they're disposable. If that means firing everyone who thinks otherwise, so be it." Her words spread like wildfire, and within hours, public opinion shifted. What began as outrage turned into admiration. Ariana became the face of a new era for the airline, young, poised, powerful, but fair. That evening, she sat alone on her penthouse balcony, the city lights twinkling below. Her phone buzzed again with a message from Tariq. "The world thinks this was revenge. We know it was strategy. Proud of you." She smiled faintly, tucking her phone away, because the truth was, while the world thought this was about a slap on a plane, Ariana had just executed a hostile takeover worth billions without ever raising her voice. All it took was one phone call. And by the time the sun rose over the skyline, Ariana Malik wasn't just the girl from row 12 anymore. She was the new CEO of one of the largest airlines in the world at 18. The flight attendant who once barked, "Get off my plane," was long gone. Now it was Ariana's plane. And the skies would never be the same again.